Hey everyone, this is Dr. Drizzle and welcome to the National Parks Expedition Challenge. Today we are in Hopewell Culture National Historic Park, that's a mouthful, in southern Ohio. Going to meet a new friend today, Andrew. Andrew, thank you so much for inviting us here today.
Thanks for coming.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Andrew. What do you do here and when did you arrive here?
I've worked here for about a year as a cultural resources program manager, which is a combination of both archaeology and curation of our collection. But before that, I was a youth pathways intern doing archaeology during the summers here for about 4 years.
So is that your experience, archaeology? Did you go to school for that?
Yeah, I have my PhD in archaeology as of recently from Ohio State, and with a focus on Ohio and a focus on plants that people eat and use in different ways at archaeological sites.
Right. Well, we are here with these beautiful mounds, these almost outer space looking things that we don't see everywhere in the country. So tell us a little bit about Hopewell and why it's important.
Yeah, Hopewell is a name that we have based on the landowner at a certain site. So we don't really know what these people were called. But 2,000 years ago, there were Native Americans that built all of these amazing earthworks with geometric designs. Some of them had sacred shrines in them, which were later used to bury loved ones. Such as Mound City here. But many of them are for solar and lunar alignments and are just on a massive scale for 2,000 years ago. And there's not a whole lot of signs that people had hierarchy here. So the idea that people were doing this sort of cooperatively or with some sort of religious ideals that guided them to build these earthworks.
So what would we find or what has been found inside of these?
Each one of these mounds at Mound City, for instance, and at some of our other places, were originally what we call shrines. They were small buildings around the size of the mounds that are in their place now. And we know this from looking at the post molds. So these little stains in the earth where you can see where something was. So there were these buildings with platforms and these clay altars in which you would find broken artifacts and bones. And around these clay altars were also all these sacred objects that included obsidian from Yellowstone that made it all the way here and were made into these hafted bifaces, these enormous spear points, and copper from Keweenaw Peninsula, Knife River flint from North Dakota, all of these different sources from all over eastern U.S. and western U.S. All made it in here with amazing artisanry as well. They did not have smelting or any sort of work with metallurgy, but they were using copper in a way in which they pounded it flat and made objects. Most of their artwork is focused on animals. So in their platform pipes, there are animals depicted on them facing the person who would be smoking. There are headdresses that are in the shape of bears. And many of their copper objects are all of animals.
So knowing that things came from a long ways, there was some commerce or something going on there. They were having to do some trading, or do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so trade as we know it today probably didn't go on just because we don't see a big network. We don't find obsidian objects all over eastern North America. We pretty much find it mined out in Yellowstone and then at a couple sites in Indiana and Ohio. So it's probably either gifts as tribute to people living at these earthworks, or to bring to these earthworks for sacred ancestors or something of that ilk. And then the other thing is that somebody could have made a trip all the way out to Obsidian Cliff at Yellowstone just to get these things, and which would have been a massive trip. It would have been, they would have required translators to be with them because there were all these different Native American groups living throughout there with all sorts of different languages.
Right. Well, why is it important to keep this or to study this? What makes it so special?
It's most important, I think, in terms of our park's mission, to show American Indian ingenuity and engineering feats that took place a long time ago, and to celebrate our nation's Native American history. Those are the most important things, and there are all sorts of other things that we learn, though, about people in general, as sort of an anthropological way of looking at things. Big questions of how people organize labor, how people would have done engineering and artifact construction with very limited technology compared to today. So those are some of our major themes, and the reason that these need preserved. There's nothing else like this in the entire world, these types of earthworks. So these are very important to preserve.
Well, I know that a little bit later on we're going to do some exploring, but if people were going to come here and visit, what would they find? Where are some areas that we could go?
Well, here at Mound City, there are artifacts from 2,000 years ago in our little museum when we're open after COVID. And then there's a trail that goes around here that is nice as a nature trail. We've tried to have native plants and native trees here so you can enjoy wildlife and vegetation. But then there are all these signs along here that tell you about what went on at various mounds. So that's Mound City, and then there's Hopewell Mound Group, also has a really nice trail where you can see a significant portion of the embankment. Near there is Site Mound, which has a really tall reconstructed mound that you're allowed to climb on top of and view the earthworks from above. We do a thing here with our maintenance crew called interpretive mowing, in which we keep grass high in areas where we know the earthworks were because they're so deflated from agriculture that they're hard to see. These are reconstructed after World War I. There was Camp Sherman was a World War I training camp here that nearly destroyed the mounds, but the Ohio Archaeological and Historical Society at the time decided it was important to reconstruct them and to excavate them after the World War I camp left. So most of these are reconstructed, but then we have interpretive mowing at the places where they're not.
I love that, interpretive mowing. I've always thought interpretive dance was cool, but I'm going to try interpretive mowing. So speaking of the reconstruction, do you have groups that come out and do any more excavations? Is this a live site?
We do excavation here often sometimes just for research to answer big questions that we have. Recently we had the German Archaeological Institute come out with some magnetometers, these machines that read magnetic anomalies under the ground to show you where the ground has been disturbed. And those map exactly onto where we think our earthworks are. But they also found all these new things. So we've been going out as the National Park Service and exploring small little surgical cuts of those things just to see what sorts of resources those represent and what we're actually protecting. And then sometimes we have universities do research as well.
Okay. So when did this become an historical park?
1922. Warren Harding made it into Mound City National Monument, and then it was largely maintained by the state for a number of years, and then in the 90s we acquired Hopeton, which is right across the river from here, And then a number of other units fell into our park as well from legislation.
So another job at the park is a biologist. So this is Anna, and she is a biologist here at Hopewell Culture. So Anna, thank you for being part of our video today. Will you tell us a little bit about how you got to the park?
Yeah, of course. So I started here last summer, and then I came back here for my second season. I studied environmental science in college, so I was really interested in plants, animals, nature, stuff in general. So then I started here as a biologist.
So what do you do here?
So in addition to it's primarily a cultural park, but outside of that, we also have a lot of land that is not enclosing the earthworks, and that we've planted native grasslands, and then we also have some forest area that we maintain as naturally as possible to try to promote diversity, since a lot of grasslands especially have been lost.
So what are we standing near?
Yeah, so this is a native garden that was planted not too long ago, and it's supposed to highlight the types of food, crops that may have been grown during the time when these earthworks were built. So we have maygrass, sunflowers, tobacco, different types of plants that would have been used at the time. And it's been a really good interpretive thing too, because visitors really like learning about what might have been actually growing at this time.
So would these have all been growing in the same area, or is this set up?
This is probably a lot more consolidated, so you can just kind of see it all as once. It's in pretty neat rows. This is probably a lot more, consolidated, like I said, just as a really good show opportunity right here.
What would we find here besides this? Any other biology cool things we would find?
Yeah, so a lot of it would have been forested probably. Grasslands probably wouldn't have been specifically right here, but they would have been in other parts of Ohio, and so that's why we spent so much time restoring them to try to promote diversity of really cool bird species, really cool mammal species, stuff like that.
Any animals that we might find around here?
Yeah, of course. The birds are actually really awesome, and so are the insects. It's really surprising amounts of diversity, even in our relatively small fields. Mammals we're hoping to learn more about soon through doing a mammal survey, so we'll figure out what cool critters we have in the back corners of our park. But
how do they do the surveys, Anna?
Through camera traps, so you can do it super non-invasively, put it in the very back corners of the park, and learn who's crawling around back there.
Is this your first park?
This is my first park, yep.
Your dreams, do you want to travel around the country, be at all different types of parks, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Illinois, so I haven't really left the Midwest too much, so I would love to see especially more of the parks out west. I haven't been out there much.
Okay.
There's a lot to see for sure.
There is. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So another pathway to the park is through an internship, and this is a very unique internship. Rachel, thank you so much for being part of our experience today, but you're actually the first intern that we have met during the National Parks Expedition Challenge. So why don't you introduce yourself to the kids and tell us how you got here.
So my name is Rachel. I'm currently a master's student at the University of Central Florida, and I am interning here at Hopewell Culture through a program called ACE, which is American Conservation Experience. I'm a curatorial intern, so I am working directly with Andrew with the artifacts. I'm doing a lot of 3D scanning of the artifacts, so I'm getting pictures of them and then getting them digitally into the computer so you can look at them that way.
So will that be sort of a virtual reality experience for the kids, or?
Yeah, so I think the big goal here is just to get them online so people can look at them, you know, especially in a time like this with the pandemic when you can't necessarily go to the museum. You're able to still look at the artifacts and see them in their entirety instead of just a picture of them on a screen.
So I'm assuming you use a 3D camera?
There's a 3D scanner. It has a camera in it, and then it is connected to a device that rotates the image and uses lasers to capture all the details on it as well.
Nice. Now, will that go up on the website, like you said, for kids to watch, or is it sort of in the process of starting now?
It's still sort of in the process. It kind of started with my arrival. They had experimented with it a little bit before, but kind of really delve right into.
So kids, another way that you can get into the parks is through internships. So check that out. Even in high school, we have some parks that hire high school kids in concessions and help like with the boating and things like that. So there's always a way for you to get into the parks. Thanks, Rachel.
You're welcome.
So where are we now? This looks very interesting. I'm seeing a lot of pipes, it looks like.
Yeah, this is Mound 9, which is also known as the effigy pipe mound. Like many others of these mounds, this was originally a building here, a small building or shrine that was dismantled at some point, but then the contents of it remained and were covered over in layers of earth that were set up, engineered into gravel and sand and clay layers. And then in one of they're near one burial, but not part of the person that was there, there is an intrusive hole where it seems like there was a large bag full of over 200 effigy pipes. And effigy pipes just means that the bowl of the pipe, not the wooden stem that's made out of pipestone, would have had an animal or human on it. So Hopewell usually has animals depicted on it, on their effigy pipes, but then also figures that are interpreted as shamans that you see here that are humans dressed up in animal form. And this also gives us some idea of what people would have looked like. One of the few examples of actually having a figurine or some example of what people looked like. So those were discovered in the 1840s by Ephraim Squire and Davis, and those somehow ended up in the hands of collectors and made their way across the pond to England, where they're now housed at the British Museum. So a bunch of our pipes from Mound City that we have on display are replicas of what is in the British Museum. We do have quite a few that are still here, though, too, that you can see in our museum and are in our collection storage.
So what I found really interesting with this is that they probably created, like you said, what they saw. And for this is a living storyboard of what animals may have been here, seeing what they might have looked like. How cool is that? Now, they wouldn't have lived on these mounds, but did these mounds go deeper into the dirt or deeper into the ground?
A little bit. So some people think that they removed the topsoil and it was just subsoil exposed on these. The jury's still out whether that happened at all these sites, because that's a whole other undertaking to get rid of that much soil. But most of the mounds you see here are just dug down a little bit farther, so a foot or two down farther than what you see on the surface. Most of it was built up.
So Andrew, we have a lot of students that are watching this that really are excited about national parks, and the more they watch these videos, they think that there may be a career for them. So what are something they can do right now to get ready for the national parks?
Yeah, well, I'd say visit your national parks and try to get an idea of what's available. There are all sorts of jobs, from maintenance to working in visitor centers to working in museums. And yeah, just reach out to your close by national parks and see what sorts of jobs are there. And just stay curious. There's all sorts of things that you'll find out that you like that you didn't even think you did before, just from paying attention.
Great advice. So we have had a wonderful day today here at the Hopewell Culture National Historical Park. We've enjoyed our time working with Ranger Andrew and with Anna and with our intern Rachel. So we want to leave here today, but we want you to tell us about your goals for this park.
We want to preserve and educate people about these mounds. So preserve these mounds for future generations so that people can learn from the past how people treated their landscapes, how people treated their environment in the past, and learn how to do that for the future, and hold on to these things that people treated well for years as monuments and keep them as a part of our national heritage.
Which leads me to our STEM challenge. Based on the goals of learning from the past to make our present and future better, we want you to do some investigation of your own community and find out what things are important or hold value. And there's a couple ways you can do this. For example, if there's a special tree in your neighborhood that people really enjoy, you can go out and take a picture of that on your phone or with a camera, or you can draw a picture of it. And then we want you to see how you could preserve that for future generations. So you could go back and do a clay model of the tree, or a paper mache, or a drawing that you could then donate to the town council so that everyone could see it. Or if you want to go a little bit more high tech, you can take the photo that you took or the drawing and scan it into your computer and use a program like Tinkercad or SketchUp to make a 3D rendering of this. And then you could even take it to a 3D printer at your school and print a model of it and share it with your community. No matter what you do, do good. We want to make sure that your passion intersects your purpose. This is Dr. Drizzle from Hopewell National Historical Park, out.